Welcome to the Always Becoming podcast with Dr. Lynn Santiago. Dr. Lynn and her guests explore two questions: who am I? And are we always becoming? We all have a becoming story. Be inspired by the personal becoming stories told by guests who share the risks and challenges, the successes and the letdowns, the joys and the heartaches they experience while on their own becoming journey. Here's your host, Dr. Lynn Santiago.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is season 2 of my podcast. Now, I changed the name over this last, between these two seasons. So it was the Dr. Lynn Santiago show. I've changed it to Always Becoming podcast. I think it really captures exactly what I'm doing here. So if you're feeling burnt out and you're trying to juggle family and career and probably many other things, or you are concerned about someone that you know that you love who may be feeling exhausted, stressed out, worn out, maybe even considering a job or career change, then you need to listen to my next guest, Grace Lange. She's with the Burnout Prevention Project. She really delves deep into what burnout means to her. She shares some of her own becoming story in a chapter titled Giving Myself Grace, which I love that use of her name. And she tells us what has inspired her to create her own consulting company, Grace K. Seriously, you are going to hear a very futuristic, persuasive, and inspiring young woman who is clearly set off following her own life passions. So let's get to it.
Hi, Grace.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited about learning more about you and learning about what you think about how we grow, and what that process is. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk about what it means to be always becoming and growing and striving. So,
Okay. So I always start, first question is, are we always becoming?
yes. So I believe we're always becoming, because if we're always growing and striving and really looking for the next step, I think we're always becoming. And even if we don't try, you naturally are changing and growing. I think sometimes I also was thinking, always becoming could be, you could be coming into something, you're striving to be better, but also always becoming could be, you're just changing. And even if it's good or bad, we're always in different times and seasons of our life. So always becoming, I think, has this definition of becoming what, but but what do you think you're becoming it today? And I also think it can be today, tomorrow. What are you becoming in a year? But also becoming every day, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And that's why I have, the I am is sort of like I am ... And there's some perspective about that we are the personas or masks that we put on ourselves, right? The titles that we may have or have earned, or the things that we own, right? And from a becoming process, but is that really who you are underneath that? No.
Yeah, I think it's easy to become what you like you said, like the personas that you put on. So, your job, or, even if it's like being a mother, it's like, that's what you are defined as. And I think that sometimes it can be kind of blinding to who am I actually inside. And, if you don't know what you value and you don't know truly deep down who you are and where you're rooted in, you can become the world, not yourself.
Oh my gosh, I like that. You can become the world and not yourself. It's beautiful. All right. So tell me about your own path. You have created Burnout Prevention Project, And what is that about? Like, first, let's start with what pulled you into that direction of creating that.
Yeah, so Kelsey Buell is actually the founder of the Burnout Prevention Project. So it was her whole idea, but she pulled me in right away into her idea before it kind of became anything. And Kelsey and I, we had this, so she's been able to interview, thousands of people. And she's discovered that people are not satisfied in their jobs and just really aren't happy. And that was a recurring thing that she had. And it was like, why are people unsatisfied and why are people unfulfilled? And so she set out on this journey to figure that out. And it all came back to the burnout prevention, because people are burned out, tired, and women more so are struggling with this than men. And there's like a statistic that said more than 2 million women have left the workforce between February 2020 and February 2021. So the idea that why are women leaving and what can we do to help, and burnout prevention. So our goal is to intervene before burnout happens, because, and really just talk about the things that no one talks about. And for me, so just being really starting into my career and very young, we all experience burnout in such a different way. And for me, like, it was slightly hard to relate to some people right away, but I started to realize that we all experience the same things, just in a different light. And the importance of learning how to prevent burnout and learning how to truly be fulfilled and take a break and learn how to rest is so important to learn when you're just starting your career.
Yeah. You bring up sort of the changes that have happened with the pandemic, and some people, when they heard that there was going to be these shutdowns, they went into this means it's going to be more relaxed. We get to work from home, right? And then that's not what happened, because now they were home working while also having to be the teacher of their children, and the little ones running around, and the expectation that they could do more because they're home.
Yeah. It's just throwing everything together when you used to, I know Microsoft, for instance, they created this thing called your virtual commute, and people who didn't implement, you used to get up, take a shower, get ready for work and go. And that time of reflecting, and you have that 5 minutes in your car, that 5 minutes could change your whole entire day. But now when you wake up and do it all, and you don't even maybe take the time to put yourself together or anything, you're losing that time to reflect or prepare yourself for your day. And that right there is such an important thing to do. And when we don't have that, it is very detrimental, I would say, maybe too.
Yeah.
I don't just want to say mental health, but it is mental health, but it's detrimental to you, your family, your career, and everything. And I think that burnout is something people think it's like, oh, like you're just tired, you don't want to work anymore. Well, that affects your kids, your spouse, everything,
Yes. I know for myself, I've worked with many clients who have felt depressed with the pandemic and lacking of motivation, and they're doing their work, but they're struggling with staying focused and having, feeling meaningful in it, and purposeful. And so suggesting to them and helping them work into the idea of get up, take a shower, get dressed, just as if you were going to work. And maybe, maybe a little bit, you can go a little more casual, but go through that process and that routine. And then when things started to open up a little bit, now do all of that, but now go to a coffee shop, or go to some other place that you can, a bookstore where they have kind of quiet areas, so that you can disconnect from everything else. And going home too, I think, is a big thing. Like, I'll hear people saying like, how do you shut the door, right? Or how do you say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, however that is, and stop.
Yeah, when people are driven in such different ways. So some people are being super successful at this working from home thing, but Kelsey and I are both certified in predictive index. And with that, we learn a lot about how people are driven in natural and unnatural ways. And one thing we talk about is some people really struggle. Their favorite part of the day is their drive home because that's their time to decompress and be away from people.
Mhm.
And when those people don't have that, it is so hard because then, they get home and their family comes home or whatever, and they're like, I just don't want to talk to anybody, but it's not your fault. But,
Yes.
and it just, yeah, I think the whole virtual commute is some way that people can implement that is so beneficial for them.
Yes. That sounds like an awesome
Mhm.
idea. And
Mhm.
Microsoft seems to be only one of maybe few
Yeah.
corporations that have put that into place.
Mhm.
That's because, there is a lot of counterintuitive beliefs about the things that actually make us more productive, like taking a
Mhm.
nap or a little
Uh-huh.
brief power nap. Companies, if they listen to that, but they think, no, how am I going to
Mhm.
give my
Yeah.
employees a nap? So you also
Well,
have your own. I was looking at the website and,
Mhm.
or looking at your bio, and do you have your own company or your own something set aside from the Burnout Prevention Project?
Yeah. So actually, in my junior year of college, I started Grace K Consulting. So it kind of started off as solely marketing consulting because my major is marketing. I guess I should preface. I actually am a student yet. I still have 1 year left of college, which
Okay.
very stressful, school starting up here soon. But I started Grace K Consulting, and marketing is something I love, but not necessarily my passion. But I've been able to kind of weave my passions into this consulting company. So I've been able to help with a little bit of recruiting, and I'm a natural recruiter. That's just my personality. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm doing a little bit of marketing consulting on the side for a couple random companies.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
What you just said, I think is really important, that unfortunately, many people aren't able to work their passion, right?
Mhm.
There's that saying, do what you love. Actually, I think it's behind me, right? But I'm fortunate that I've been able to do what I love,
Mhm.
and from the beginning of my own, growth, and education and all of that.
Mhm.
Most people don't have that.
Mhm.
But what you just said was very important, that it doesn't mean you put it away, you throw it in the garbage.
Mhm.
You find ways to integrate it into your life in different
Mhm.
ways.
Mhm.
Or like you're just saying, marketing, you love it. It's not your passion. There's
Mhm.
other things, but you have found a way to bring
Mhm.
it together.
Well, exactly. And I think a lot of people, the reason you get burnt out is because you're feeling like your job isn't exciting anymore, or nothing's really, you don't have a spark. You don't get excited to go to work. Well, and I think people think, okay, I just need to change my job. And sometimes you do, because obviously sometimes it's not the right fit. But it's
Mhm.
all about finding things in your job that do make you excited. So one thing, I always give this example. So had this internship at this company, and I was doing marketing, and it was the analytical side of it. And I am not analytical, like details make me
Mhm.
kind of want to throw up. Like I can't do details. I'm a big picture creative mind. And
Mhm.
so I was doing that, and I was not really satisfied at all, but I was like, well, like I have this job, it's a good job, but I knew I still am very passionate about team development and the culture of companies. And that's something I knew that I wanted to pursue in my career. So
Mhm.
I took it upon myself to read a couple books. I put together this report I did all this research on how I could help this company be better, because I was feeling like the culture where there wasn't super great. So I took it upon myself and spent, obviously you should don't spend company time working on something that's not your job,
Mhm.
but taking that little extra time to put something together. And then I presented it because I thought this makes me excited, but I
Yeah.
also have my jobs to do. So bringing things and creating things and being creators of change and taking risks, like that's a great way to prevent burnout. People think like, well, I just have to rest. Like, yes, rest is
Mhm.
important, but taking risks and being an implementer of change is also a great way to prevent burnout at the same time.
Yes. As I'm sure you know, that therapists and people in the healing fields or the nurturing fields, nurses, medical people, burnout is like a big thing, and self-care. I taught graduate level mental health counseling course, and every class there was a bringing into the course something about self-care, because now it's like, this is so important.
Yeah. And I think also a thing with self-care is everyone has their own idea of self-care, but when it's seen to the public, it's like, oh, sometimes it's seen as, oh, going to get your nails done or going to all this stuff. And for me, that's not my self-care. My self-care is spending time with my family or doing things like that. And so I think there's this, I don't want to call it a negative connotation, but sometimes we're like, oh, I don't need self-care because I don't need to do all that stuff, whatever, X, Y, Z. But self-care can just be as much as, maybe sleeping in one day or going to bed early because you know that your body needs it, or listening to what you need.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And not necessarily going and going shopping, whatever. And that's great. But
Right. It's like being connected to your body and listening to what it's needing, or being connected to all these aspects of yourself, or these parts in your life, like you said, family, but then there may be other things like spiritual side, or physical side. And when we're working, sometimes that all gets pushed to the side. So knowing who to bring it in. Yeah. So what chapter of your life are you in now? What would you say the title of your chapter is?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I would say,
or maybe there was another part of your life that you have a title.
I thought about this before, and now I can't remember what I thought it was, but I think
giving myself grace.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I loved that.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought it was. I was saying, because giving myself grace is my biggest topic that I always talk to people about. And yes, it's my name, Grace. Yes. So it's very fitting. And
perfect marketing. You got it right.
Well, and giving myself grace is something that I have struggled with, like, personally, so badly. And it's something that stems from, like, being a very competitive person and continually, like, wanting to be the best, even through and through. Like, I will do anything I can to be number one, and it's caused me to burn out. And being so young, like, people are like, oh, you burn out when you get older. And what I have kind of been through the ringer, I think. And like, but it's also certain things. And like lately I've been really trying to put this into practice. But when we talk about self-care, I was always like, I don't need to do anything because I just have to work hard, and I'm a hard worker and I'm an achiever. So I always do what I have to do, and I'm a grinder, and I'm going to do it. But what happens, I could tell this story about, it was this past spring, and I had a part-time job. Like, I worked like 25 hours. I was going to school. Yeah. I had just started my company at the same time. I was helping Kelsey out with the Burnout Prevention Project on the side. I love to work out. So I was going to the gym every day. I try to go to church like a couple times a week. And I just got into a relationship.
Oh my gosh. Your relationships take away from everything else usually.
Yeah. Like,
so how you balance that.
Yeah. So, and I always was having like stomach aches, but nothing, I could usually handle it, but I never really felt good. But this past spring, it got to the point where like I couldn't even go anywhere because my stomach hurt so bad. And I remember this one specific time, I actually had like finished everything, and I felt like, okay, what now? And I was in my car, and I just started bawling, and I called my mom, and I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I feel like I have things, I'm done, but why am I so stressed? And why do I feel like so much pressure right now? And it is because I was going. And this one time when I decided I could take a break, I felt guilty and like I should be doing something. And she was like, Grace, you have to use this as God's way of telling you that it's okay to take a break and you need to just rest. And like at that moment, I just needed to rest, and I didn't know that. And now it's so hard still for me to be like, okay, Grace, take a break. It's okay to just to sit, or even on the weekends going home and not bringing my computer with me, or that gives me anxiety. But that's why I'm in this process of learning how to give myself grace and learn that it's okay to not be at 100% all the time, and sometimes 80% is better than 100%, because good enough sometimes actually is good enough.
Yeah, I always say that good enough changes every day, or even changes a minute. What you could do a minute ago, maybe for some reason you get sick or whatever, your good enough is always changing. And being forgiving on yourself and being gentle for yourself, and how would you define grace? Giving yourself grace. How would you define that?
Giving yourself grace is learning. I wouldn't actually say learning. Giving yourself grace is deciding that it's okay to not be perfect all the time.
Wow. Love it.
Yeah, because perfection truly, and it runs in my family. I think I was talking to my mom about this. I was like, she was raised to be a perfectionist and be very by the book, and everything is perfect. And even I think about like my parents' house. Everything has a spot. It's perfect, perfectly clean. And that's how she was raised. And that's how I and my sister was raised. And hopefully I'm not so like that when I raise my own children, but it is sometimes something you can't sometimes prevent, because it is how it's instilled in you.
Exactly. That's part of our becoming process. We absorb and we take in the beliefs of our caregivers and those in their earlier life, right? And we also create stories about things that we're observing, right?
Yeah.
So your mother might not have said, you got to have everything in order, but you saw her putting everything in order, right? Think, well, that's what it's supposed to be. That's how life is supposed to be. And so that becomes part of your becoming, but it really isn't. Right? They say a lot of times that, you're becoming, but you always have to you're becoming to go back to who you were.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and like, it's also your becoming story. It has the opportunity to bring others along with you and help them become. So for instance, like in this situation, I was just talking about like my learning about all this stuff and learning to give myself grace and talking about all these things. I've talked to my mom about it a lot, and it's also challenged her, I think, to change her mindset a little bit too, and really just learn. I mean, we're all in this challenge together, but even my friends, and talking to them about it, and it's so interesting to see other people change around you, and the people we work with, it's like, wow, you never heard that before. Well, either did I until a month ago, and I'm learning just along with you. But it's all it goes back to that saying, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's like, if you want to go far and become with everyone else, you have to bring people with you. Yeah.
It goes along with the idea that our change happens in relationships. Like we need to be in relationships in order to change, because people are mirrors. They reflect us. And that's how, when you described what was happening with your mother, that it was like reflecting back.
Yeah. And I think a big part of your story too is who you're surrounded with as well. And like they always say, you're some of the 5 people, right, you spend the most time with. And I think God put my boyfriend Sam right now in my life too, because in this whole being kind of high strung and everything's boom, 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 I'm planned, he is the complete opposite. And the fact that he also helps me. And so I'm becoming less, I don't know if uptight's the right word, but I'm probably really uptight, but and he's helping me along. And it's like, that's so interesting in your story, those who you're with. And like you talked about your chapter, in one chapter, it could be the 5 people you were around in, high school, then college, then in your career. And
awesome point, because you change those groups, those groups, and you're learning something new from those that's what I'm hearing you say. And I think that's just brilliant. Oh, and, were you talking about the difference between you and your boyfriend? that goes back to that idea opposites attract, when people think that that's not a good thing, it's like, oh boy, that's why, you have problems. But you only have problems when you're not open to learning from the other person.
And you're not, when you're not recognizing how it can be a strength.
Exactly.
And I think he sees it in me where it's like, oh gosh. And I see it in him, I'm like, oh gosh. But we think about it in like, this makes sense because we need each other. He needs me to just, let's go,
Exactly.
Be like, relax. So it does work in its own way. And like, obviously I believe that everything happens. God puts people in your life and it just is, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was on the website, and what I loved was these presentations that I love the titles of them. And you could have easily made one presentation with all of those things.
Yes.
Right.
We've tried, but it's like, you need to, if you want to dig in, you've got to separate them. Yeah.
Just offhand, do you know what can you share with us what the titles are, or even pick one of the presentations that you can describe? Yeah.
Well, I know one of them is giving yourself grace, which we kind of already discussed a little bit, and just truly digging deep into these topics of learning how to give yourself grace and learning how, like I said, how to be okay with not being perfect and not being 100% at all times. And then another one that we speak about, and this is Kelsey's kind of bread and butter, is being paralyzed by perfection. And in that presentation, she goes deeply into her past with her need for perfection and how it's kind of affected who she is today, and how it's affected like how she works and whatnot.
And I'm going to be interviewing her.
Yes.
So I think that's awesome. What you're sharing, that as a little preview, that idea of trying to be perfect, and the consequences of that, and learning how it's okay not to be. Like, I am enough.
Yeah, exactly. She has some great stories, so I'm excited for you to talk to her. But really, just perfection could steal everything from you. And like I said, it's definitely like ingrained in me as being a perfectionist, but it can really truly make you lose friends, and it can make you just like unhappy. And honestly, something I've been trying to think about is, it's really hard for me, but life is truly way too short to be so serious and so perfect,
Yes.
But it's really hard to think about that. And
sometimes it takes a tragedy or a trauma to happen for people to kind of just get that all of a sudden.
And this is kind of maybe not on the same topic, but also something to think about when you're worried that you're not good enough, or something's not going to work out, or you're stressing what the future is, to think about. And I know Kelsey had asked me this, and I will never forget this. I probably should tell her that. Hopefully she hears this. But she asked me, she was like, Grace, when is the time you truly failed? And I thought, I couldn't think of a time when I was actually a failure, because really everything that you do, or like your story, the things you've been through, it all, when you have a growth mindset and are thinking about how you can learn, you truly probably have never failed, and thinking about where you were 5 years ago and where you are now, like you made it.
Exactly. That's right.
So interesting to think about.
So how could people get a hold of you? Excuse me. Do you have a website for your own company?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I do. It's just Grace K, like just the letter K Consulting. And I have my own website, and both Kelsey and I are both on LinkedIn, and the Burnout Prevention Project has an Instagram, a Facebook, LinkedIn, and we have a website. So if you just search the Burnout Prevention Project, we're all on there, and our contact information is everywhere. So and we're hopefully starting our own podcast soon. This is like a whole thing, but
it's fun.
Grace, and not getting it down right away, but we're hopefully starting in one. So looking out for that.
It is definitely fun. I never thought I would become a
Mm-hmm.
podcaster. I wasn't even a person who listened to podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
even though people
Mm-hmm.
told me, oh, you got to listen to this one. But there was something that just drew me,
Yeah.
and really connected me with the producer, with
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Steele in
Mm-hmm.
Contact Talk Radio, and he's going to be the
Mm-hmm.
one that produces this episode.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yes, and it was just this kind of synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it. I had a thought. I said, and the next day he had reached out to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was
That's
talk
easy.
about
Everything happens. Yeah.
manifestation,
Yeah. So
right?
my favorite podcast is the Craig Gershell podcast, The
Mhm.
Leadership. Uh, he, I just started listening to it like this summer, and he has changed everything I think about leadership and
Mhm.
what it means to be a leader and how you need to sort of like lead with your head or lead with your heart, not your head, and how everyone responds better to a leader who's authentic and real.
Exactly.
And I just like, oh,
That's
I
awesome.
love that. So
Hmm.
yeah, he's amazing. Mm.
So all of your contact information will be on the description of the podcast that people would be able to access as well.
Okay,
So
cool.
that will be good.
Mhm.
We're getting close, but do you have anything, the words of wisdom that you can share with us
Mhm.
as a way of closing?
Yeah, I think this is just one quote that I have actually like just lived by, and I read it in a book, The 15 Infallible Laws of Growth. I read this idea from, I'm not going to say it exactly how it was because I don't remember, but the idea that what if excellence could spread like mediocrity? Because like we were actually just talking about on this podcast, that you're the sum of those you spend the time with, and so choosing who you spend the time with wisely, and if those that you're spending the time with are striving for excellence, that's going to spread like wildfire, because mediocrity has the idea it can spread very easily when people are living a mediocre life,
Right.
know.
And surrounding themselves with people who are living a
Mhm.
mediocre life, right?
Yeah.
It works both ways.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
challenge
beautiful.
yourself to find people who are striving to be excellent, and then it'll just trickle down and everyone will be excellent, and then it's gonna be great. We'll all be amazing.
That's right. I believe that that's possible.
I do too.
Absolutely believe that's possible.
Yeah, I have a
So,
lot of faith, and hopefully
mhm,
I say I have a lot of faith, but we're getting there.
that's right. One day at a time, right? One day at a time.
Exactly.
So I want to thank you. You have provided so much awesome, relevant information. A lot of things that I think listeners will be able to get something out of and apply to their own life.
Mhm.
So thank you so much.
Yes, I feel so appreciative to have been interviewed. I think this is such a great opportunity, and I'm thankful for everyone. Hopefully everyone that listens gets something out of this. So
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Talk to you soon, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
in touch.
Okay. All right. Okay. So how do you feel about it?
I feel good. I think that was really fun.
Yes. Yeah, you did awesome.
Thank you. This is my first podcast ever.
Did it just feel very natural?
Yeah.
Right? It was just like, let's have a conversation, right? And it just, whatever was coming out is going to come out, and it was beautiful. You really have a lot of, you contributed a lot of good ideas I think people are going to really love.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do.
Mhm.
Sometimes I just think I could just go and go and go, and I'm like, okay, how can I make this make sense? So I hope that it did, but I'm
No,
excited.
absolutely it did. Absolutely. Yeah. So what happens now is that I record your introduction, and then I record this, little piece at the end. And then Cameron puts it all together. And I have a new website now. I changed the website name, the podcast name. So on the Dr. Lynn Santiago show, last season's episodes are on it, but we're going to transfer it over to the new website, which is always becoming podcast.
Okay.
I was so lucky to find that domain.
I know it's hard sometimes to find like one you want. Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was like, okay, it's meant to be this. And I will let you know when it's ready, and it will be published on there, and also published to most of the major podcast platforms.
Cool.
Like iHeart and Apple and Spotify and
cool.
So
podcast.
Yeah.
Yay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be really cool. My sister was just on a podcast too, and so she was listening to it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's amazing how they've just, there was a time when people said everybody wanted to write a book.
Honestly, it's like, no.
And I was like, I didn't do a podcast, but everybody has something to say, I think. And it's, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. If you know anybody that you think might be a great guest, ask them if that's the case, and, give them my information.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges of podcast, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. I know. Well, Kelsey will be great, and we have a huge network, so I will think about like someone who would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Wasn't that amazing? So you could literally feel Grace's energy. Truly uplifting and contagious. I could feel it coming through the computer screen. It's probably a good idea to look into her offer of a free behavioral analysis and one-on-one discovery call. That could be pretty exciting for you. You can find her information in the episode's description. So let's remember Grace's ending words. What if excellence could spread like mediocrity? Keep those wise words in mind as you continue on your becoming journey this week. Thank you for listening to the Always Becoming podcast. For daily words of wisdom and inspiring becoming stories, follow me on Instagram at becoming_with_Dr. Lynn. That's Lynnne. Thank you.